Hi guys, welcome to your channel Digital Empaths, and I'm your host Sushant Ajmani. So in our weekend knowledge series today, we're going to discuss on another interesting topic which actually spawned from a very interesting conversation me and my spouse were having over the weekend, in which we were discussing on what makes the culture of an organization innovative and how a normal organization differs from an innovative organization. And are there any interesting traits that can be leveraged or inculcated in a normal organization which does not have an innovation as a culture so that they also start building more and more innovative solutions and add value not just for the internal human capital but also for their clients or the business stakeholders. And after a lot of deliberation, we reached to a conclusion that one thing that really sparks the innovative culture in the organization is the learning attitude. That if there is no culture of learning within the organization, it's very, very difficult for that organization to really spark that desire among their employees to bring more and more innovative ideas. Because oftentimes we see that a large percentage of our workforce is kind of lost in their day to day operational challenges. And they rarely get an opportunity to think out of the box. Okay? And even if you look at the kind of time that they invest on their own self, okay, it's so minuscule that it makes you think that if the people in the workforce are not selfish to their own intellectual nourishment or to their own career, how can they bring the culture of innovation within the organization? So the very, very important thing here to understand is that if we really, really want to bring the culture of innovation, we need to make each employee selfish to themselves first. Because being selfish is very, very important. Because if you're just thinking about the day to day work that you're doing, the work that you're delivering to the client, but you are discounting your own nourishment, how would you come up back with some out of the box thinking idea? And that's something oftentimes we don't focus on. Now, after a lot of theories and after a lot of debates between me and my spouse, we went back to our last 15, 20 years of our career, and we found that when we started our career, the first few years of our career were focusing exclusively on just doing the work or following the norms which were laid down by our predecessors, following the norms which are prevalent within the company, and instead of storming them, just follow what the protocol is. So the first 7 to 8 years of our life were completely focused on delivering without focusing too much on the efficiencies or the value. Okay? Because when we talk about efficiency and value, you need to have some solid foundation, some amount of maturity to understand the process or ecosystem in which you are working on. So as a normal employees, what we did was the first few years of our life were only spent towards delivering and without bothering too much about adding value for our own organization or for the clients or even adding any efficiency into our day-to-day life so that it makes us more efficient in whatever work we were doing. And after certain years in our career, we realized that the kind of work that we are doing is getting mundane or there is a lot of inefficiencies which are there. Now, that realization of inefficiencies were either sparked in our mind by our managers or superiors, or sometimes by our own realization because we were doing the same task again and again. And that was the moment we realized that no, we need to pivot from being just a delivery person to bring an efficiency into our day to day life. And that's the era when we switch towards focusing more on efficiencies so that we can make our daily life a little bit better than it was earlier. And after being into that efficient game, we reach to the tipping point where the law of diminishing return kicks in. That how much more efficiency you can bring in the process of the work that you are doing. Because after that, it's a game of value. Because there is a whole evolution curve. You start your career being a more delivery person. You start learning the traits of the business, the nuances of the business. You start learning what the expectations of the internal and external stakeholders are, how you can save more cost and time, and gradually you move into that efficiency charter. And after spending few years over there, then the whole eureka moment happens that, oh my God, I never worked towards the value. Now, what does value here means? Now, value is again a very subjective thing. It's just how you perceive it as. Now, what you perceive it internally about the work that you're delivering to the client or to your stakeholders is very different the way the stakeholder is perceiving the work that you're delivering. So it's a very debatable topic that what you feel as a value versus the what value that other person is perceiving from the work that you're delivering. So it's very, very important that in our life, we need to be very cognizant about that the whatever work we are doing, at what part of the spectrum we are in the delivery spectrum, the efficiency spectrum, or the value spectrum. Now, it's very important that when you are playing the value game, there has to be consensus between both the internal and external stakeholder that what is the baseline of that, what are those parameters based on which the value will be perceived. Whether it is based on some quantifiable KPI, is it some kind of a qualitative fact? Now, what are those quantitative and qualitative indicators that will be leveraged to measure that what the value is actually? And unless and until you are in that value game, it's very, very difficult to bring that thought of innovation. Because in order to bring innovation, you need to have a very clear distinction in mind being a doer or an efficiency player or a value player. Because innovation is not just restricted to the technology world only. It's not about building a new model. It's not about building a new optimized BPM process. It's not about coming up with some very high quality consultative resources which brings more efficiency into our day-to-day charters. So the whole notion of innovation is again based on the perception that what you perceive as an innovation is very different than what the other party who is taking the benefit of that innovation perceive it as. Okay, so if we really, really want to create a culture of innovation within the company, the first and foremost thing that we need to invest in that how to make each and every individual function within our organization to have a whole learning culture ingrained into their philosophy or in their DNA. It's very, very important. Because if the workforce is spending a significant percentage of their time just delivering the task that they have been assigned, then it's very, very difficult to expect from them to come up with some out-of-the-box idea. So oftentimes what the companies do is they bring the fresh people from the out market, okay? They create a whole innovation team. They create a whole dedicated center of excellence. And now this group of 7, 8 or 10 people are tasked with bringing innovation. But remember, when you start the whole innovation journey, you start from a small pocket. Either it starts from a one business function, maybe a combination of two business functions, but oftentimes it just dies over there. Because in order for any innovation to see the light or have a wider acceptance or have a wider impact, it needs to scale up beyond that one or two departments. And oftentimes what we see is that most of the innovation gets restricted to one or two functions. And it's very, very important that if we want to make it a viral effect, if we want the rest of the organization to also join forces in there, the first and foremost thing we need to do is to create that whole learning philosophy or the learning culture in each and every business function. That's the seed. That's the beginning of the innovation journey. Now, learning can be anything. It could be investing in learning new tools, new technologies, maybe learning some soft skills, maybe learning some functional skills, maybe developing the attitude among the client, among the workforce, that how to start thinking from the client perspective, start being more empathetic to the client's challenges, their philosophy, how do they run the business, their targets, their roadmaps, their vision, their mission. How can you believe in that? How can you be a part of that journey? Because oftentimes what we see is that we go to our offices every day, we do our day-to-day assigned tasks. Now, certain times when the clients come to us and ask us to do some kind of a diagnostic things, because the moment you think about diagnostic analysis, you think about doing root causes, and that's where the problems and solution game starts. Because being a part of an analytics ecosystem for last 20 years, what I've realized is that most of the work that we do every day is focusing more on the things which have happened in the past. We are focusing too much on the facts, the lagging indicators. And what happens is we get so much entangled in the past that we forget to see the whole macroeconomic factors which are influencing our business every day. We forget about this whole philosophy of behavioral economics, because that is a very, very important area of study which is influencing our day-to-day life, not just into our offices, but also into our personal life also. So understanding that human psychic, how to bring those principles of behavioral economics into our day-to-day life, into our official life, makes the work more interesting, because now you're thinking like a client, you're thinking like a consumer who is buying your products or services. So it's very, very important that if we are investing in that learning culture, we need to be very clear about where exactly that money or time is getting invested. Because if you look at the last 8 to 10 years in this ecosystem, the digital ecosystem, a lot of money has been invested in training. I myself has been a trainer for close to 6 to 7 years when I was running my own entrepreneurial journey, and I was associated with Adobe as well as with Google. And I used to do a lot of training workshops in the Asia Pacific region for the agencies, for the large enterprise clients in the BFSI sector, in the telecom, in the retail, media. And what I used to really get fascinated about, that all these big companies have so much money to spend on trainings. And it's kind of sad that more than 80 to 85% of the people who used to come in these training classes were the people who had no desire to learn. Either they were forced to go and attend these workshops, or they just came with the belief that you know what, it's a new tool, it's a new technology, it might add some more weightage to my resume. Okay, but there is no desire to learn that how this new tool or technology is going to bring efficiencies into my day-to-day work, or if not efficiency, how it's going to make my work more valuable. And whatever output I'm going to deliver to my internal stakeholders or to my external stakeholders, they would also perceive some value getting delivered from that learning that I've imbibed. But it's kind of sad that a large percentage of the participants who attend these training workshops don't come with a very clear mindset that what is they want to derive from there. So it's very, very important that if the organizations are spending money on training workshops, whether it's a soft skills training or functional trainings or technical trainings, it's very, very important to understand that how this knowledge is going to be capitalized. Okay, if there is no path of capitalizing this knowledge into a day-to-day life, and there is no visibility, no transparency among the employees that how they're going to be leveraged. Is it a short-term leverage? Is it a long-term leverage? It's very, very important. Okay, because if that transparency is not there, what will happen is the employees will also start having fatigue, the learning fatigue, where you will hear from them that, you know what, I have attended so many training sessions, I have attended all kind of different courses on Coursera, on Udemy, my company asked me to attend, but you know what, I rarely get a chance to apply those skills. Okay, I've done a course on machine learning, on Andrew Ng course, I have done some course on supply chain, I've done some course on maybe behavioral economics, I've done some course on how to do ETL or AI, but you know what? We don't even get projects within the company to apply that learning, so to apply those skills. So what is a motivation for me to learn? Okay, so that's also one of the very negative culture that starts trickling down in the organization, where when the workforce don't see an opportunity to apply the skills, they stop learning. They start dropping out those precious training hours that the company's learning and development departments invest in. Or so what is very important is that as a part of the HR function, or as a part of the different business units that we have in the organization, to think that what value these training workshops are bringing, and whether this value can really be capitalized to create a whole innovation culture or not. And if these trainings are not helping the employees shape up their thoughts, not helping them give clear visibility and transparency on how to capitalize this knowledge on, it's very, very difficult to expect from them to bring innovation. The other aspect that I've experienced in the last 20 years is that since if I've spent a lot of time on the agency side, oftentimes we have very limited clue about how the customer world is. Our learning about customer world happens when you're on the call with the customer, or maybe when you visit them maybe once or twice in a year in that ecosystem, and maybe spend maybe a week or 2 weeks with them. But when you are not with them into day-to-day life, it's very, very difficult to empathize with their day-to-day challenges. By sitting on the fence, it's very difficult to comment and criticize that, you know what, I would have done this work at probably half of the time. Or you know what, I don't know why they don't understand. It's so common sense, it's so easier, but we don't understand that the kind of an organization culture that they have, the boundaries, the whole rail guards that the organization have put around them, the whole data security laws, okay, how the different functions actually collaborate, what kind of collaboration levels that they have, what is the vision of the company. Okay, if we don't have clarity about those elements, it's very easy for the agencies to judge the clients that probably they just don't get it. So it's very, very important that in our career we should spend good amount of time also on the client side also. That's very, very important, because otherwise you will always have an unbiased view, always have a biased view about what the client world is all about. Okay, and with that myopic view, it's very, very difficult to come up with some out of the box or innovative ideas that connects or resonates with the client's problem areas. So another thing I want to call it out here is that if you really, really want to create a learning culture, we need to tell the employees that start spending time understanding the data. We spend more time understanding the technologies, those data plumbings, the different tools, but we forget very important thing is that those tools are just means to an end. The value is the data, the context is hidden within the data. And if you want to understand that context, you need to start spending time. Start looking for how to take this data and start creating a story. Because creating a story is also an art. And to create a story, you need to have the understanding of the business context. You need to understand that the different personas who are consuming the data that you are stitching it up and translating into a dashboard, how are they perceiving it, and what kind of actions do they usually take after they consume your storyline? What is the decision making process looks like? What is considered as relevant for them? What is considered as actionable for them? So if we don't have understanding of those elements, it's very difficult that whatever innovative idea that you come up with, whether it will really ring the bell with the client or not. Oftentimes when we think about innovation, we focus too much on efficiencies. We feel by building some accelerators, by building some nice APIs, by bringing some efficiencies in our ETL process, or building some nice sexy looking dashboard, or some kind of a large massive scale enterprise data lake, that those are not the true innovations. Okay, those are all the work that you are doing to bring efficiencies. Okay, and of course the whole idea behind innovation is not just to always add value which is qualitative. Sometimes bringing small efficiency lifts or improvements is also brings a lot of improvements in the financial metrics. Okay, whether you are saving time or you are saving cost, it ultimately starts impacting your gross margins. But there is something beyond the gross margins and revenue, and that is something that adds value for the customers, that adds value for the clients who are consuming your deliverables. Now, what that value could be? The value could be that you are making them look hero in their organization. The value could be you are helping them improve their goals that they have set up for their department or for their function, the monthly, those quarterly goals. Now, these goals could be some of the financial goals. These goals could be your operational goals. So unless and until we are helping the client improving on those particular goals, it's very difficult to expect from the client to perceive something that you call it as innovative, also innovative. Okay, because the efficiency game will only go to a certain level. After that, the law of diminishing returns kicks in. But you cannot just get so much economies of scale by doing so much, by running your manufacturing process for a longer time, or squeezing your suppliers, or buying in volume. There is a certain limit to which you can get that economies of scale. So after that, then what? What would you do after that? So it's very important that the employees should be taught on that what is the true meaning of value, and whatever innovation that you are trying to generate, the culture that you're trying to bring, what does that innovation gets perceived by the employees internally as well as by the client organization. Okay, so if we really want to create that innovative culture, we need to first of all sow the seeds of the learning. If there is no learning, it's impossible to expect from the employees to be innovative. You will be surprised to know that over the weekends I do a lot of career counseling for the budding analysts who have recently entered into the field of analytics, or who are in their mid-career and wants to switch to the area of maybe AI or machine learning or digital analytics. And oftentimes when I ask them that, how much time do you invest during the week towards your own self? And it's so shocking that oftentimes it may be 1 hour, 2 hours, at the most 4 to 5 hours. And that's kind of sad that every day we have 24 hours. And if you multiply by 7, that's a lot of time that we get it. And if we are only giving ourselves 3-4 hours during the week, we are doing injustice to ourselves. And not just to ourselves, but also to the organization where we are working, because they are also expecting from us to add value. And if I am not adding value to my own self, to my own intellectual nourishment, how would I be able to add value to the organization? That's impossible. It can't be possible that you are adding value for the organization, you're bringing innovation for them, but you're not investing in your own self. That philosophy does not work at all. My wife always wants to be a blogger. She always says that, you know what, I also want to write a blog. I have lots of desires. I wish I could also run my own blog, write on some interesting topics, but I don't know what to write on. I often struggle to synthesize my thoughts or stitch up some kind of a nice story and articulate in some ways. So, and my simple answer to her is that the only reason you're not able to write good blogs, the only way you're not able to kickstart your journey in this area, because you are not reading. Because unless and until you are a good reader, it's very difficult for you to be a good blogger. And oftentimes we miss this particular important element, that you will rarely find people in the world who are just the good bloggers or good writers, but they're not readers. That's impossible, because reading gives you the context. Reading gives you the perspectives. Reading gives you an opportunity to know yourself better as well as the world around you better. So unless and until you have those clarity in your thoughts, those perspectives, it's very difficult to start writing. So if you really want to invest in blogging, you need to first start investing in reading. And unfortunately, I think the kind of the culture in which we live in as an Indian culture, from a childhood, I think we never been developed or inculcated those habits of reading. And but things have changed in the last 10 years. I see the millennials, and they are really much into reading. They read a lot, whether it's fiction or non-fiction. The whole culture is changing, and they have a desire to attend a lot of training workshops. They have a desire to go up in the ladder. They also expect a learning culture. They also expect a culture which is full of experimentation. And it's very important that if you're just focusing on innovation as a standalone entity and discounting on the learning, it's impossible to build that culture. The other aspect which is very tightly coupled with learning is experimentation. Okay, that if you are learning whether a new tool or new technology or maybe any new functional skill or maybe a new domain, you also need to have an opportunity or a conducive environment to experiment that. You need that sandbox. If there is no sandbox, it's very difficult that how would you capitalize that learning on. And you don't need to expect that sandbox to come from your employer. You can also invest in that sandbox because ultimately it's up for you. You have to be selfish, because if you're not selfish to your own learning, to your own career, how would you be contributing value for the company? So the sandbox could be anything. Sandbox could be a machine. Sandbox could be maybe a notebook where you start writing your ideas. A sandbox could be a group, a cohort of people where you all collaborate and meet up and discuss on different things. A sandbox is not just a machine. Okay, we don't need to always start writing a code or to do any kind of a new jazzy machine learning or AI-based model. So we need to start expressing our ideas, start articulating in a meaningful way. Keep it simple. Let other people criticize on it. Let healthy debates happen. Because if the debates are not happening, criticisms are not happening, and we are not feeling uncomfortable, we are not feeling vulnerable with our own self, it's very difficult to create a culture of innovation. And I personally, at my personal front, I think for the last, I would say 14 to 15 years, I follow a very strict discipline of investing 4 hours every day towards intellectual nourishment. Now, those 4 hours could be anything. I can do maybe half an hour in the night, 1 hour in the morning, but there has to be a discipline. If there is no discipline about intellectual nourishment, there is no discipline about your own career, it's very difficult for you to add value for the function in which you work in or the organization where you work for. And if you want the new ideas keeps on coming to you, start investing in different subjects. Don't just lock yourself into the functional area in which you are working in. If you are a data engineer, do not just read only about data engineering. If you are a visualization guy, don't just read about Tableaus and Power BIs of the world. If you are a digital engineering guy, don't just read about Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics. So try to broaden your horizon. Bring other subjects also as a part of your learning agenda, because that will give you perspective. We can learn from some adjacent fields, adjacent verticals, and that learning will further augment our knowledge. It will give us a different perspective, a different way of stitching our story. So it's very important that we create this culture of learning within our organization, and unless and until this culture gets created, people will not experiment. And if they are not experimenting, they are not feeling vulnerable, they are not feeling uncomfortable, how would they do innovation? It's impossible. There's a very nice linkage between all these things. So at the end, I would just say that in my last 20 years, I've done lots of mistakes, and I think I feel like I failed more than being successful in my last 20 years. But all those failures, all those mistakes have taught such an amazing lessons about life, have given us so many different perspectives about how to perceive the things, how to do the proper solutioning, how to proper identify a problem, how to proper create an approach towards that problem. And those are very important traits that we often discount it, we often ignore it. It's not just about writing a code or building a solution, it's also about conceptualization of that. And that's the fun part. Have a healthy debate, create a culture where people are criticizing each other ideas, but in a very constructive manner. And till the time we have that culture, it's very, very difficult to expect from the employees or your internal human capital to create that environment of innovation. So I would be very keen to hear your perspective on this. Again, this is a very biased topic here. I've shared my perspective. If you have your own perspective, I would be more than happy to learn based on your experience in the past with your current organization, where you feel that you are able to create a innovative culture, and what are your learnings, and how those learnings can also influence other organizations. So I think that will be a very healthy debate on this particular topic. So please post your valuable comments below this video, and if you have any ideas for another different topic, let me know. I'll be more than happy to cover in the next episode. So until then, hasta pronto.